The new CEO looked me in the eye on his first day and told me I was exactly the kind of talent this company needed. 4 months later, I found out what he wrote about me when he thought no one was looking. I want to tell you about one email sent at 11:22 on a Thursday night in October. I did not know it existed for 7 months. When I finally read it, sitting in my solicitor's office on a Tuesday afternoon with the rain hitting the window in long diagonal streaks, I had to read it 3 times before I could speak. Stay with me. Because what that email said and how I got hold of it and what the tribunal did with it is a story I have needed to tell for a long time. My name is not important. I was 29 years old, a junior account manager at a financial services firm in central Manchester, and I had been in that role for 3 years. 3 years of good reviews, 3 years of hitting targets, 3 years of being, as my line manager put it in my last appraisal, one of the most promising people on the floor. I believed that. I had worked hard enough to believe it. Then Richard arrived. Richard became CEO in June 2023. He had come from a firm in the southeast, and he brought with him a reputation for operational efficiency, which in practice meant to restructure within the first 90 days. He held a town hall on his 3rd day. He spoke well, confident, direct, the kind of person who makes a room feel like things are going to get better. I remember the particular quality of the light in that atrium, the way it came through the glass roof and made everything look slightly more important than it was. I remember thinking, this might actually be fine. It was not fine. By August of 2023, I had been moved off 2 accounts I had managed for 2 years, both reassigned to colleagues who had less experience and lower performance scores. I had been excluded from a strategy away day I had attended every year since joining. My one-to-ones with Richard, which he had established for all senior junior staff in his first week, had been cancelled 3 times and not rescheduled. I raised it with HR. The HR manager was a woman called Janet. Janet was efficient and professional and careful in the particular way of someone who knows more than she's allowed to say. She told me my concerns had been noted. She told me Richard was still finding his feet. She told me these things looking slightly to the left of my face. I did not know then what she knew. Let me ask you something, and I mean this genuinely. When you are the only person in a room who looks like you and things start going wrong and people start being careful around you, how long do you wait before you let yourself think the thing you do not want to think? How long do you give the benefit of the doubt? I gave it until September. That is when I found out I had been passed over for a promotion I had been told in writing I was being considered for. The role went to a colleague called Tom. Tom had been at the firm for 14 months. I'd been there 3 years. Tom is white, I am black. I looked at that announcement and I sat very still at my desk for a long time. And I thought about every conversation I had told myself I was misreading. I was not misreading them. I was dismissed in October 2023. The stated reason was role elimination as part of the ongoing restructure. My position was made redundant. No one else in my team was made redundant. The team continued to operate. My accounts were redistributed the following week. I contacted ACAS on the 21st of October. I instructed a solicitor named Priya on the 28th. Priya had 14 years of employment discrimination experience, and she asked me in our first meeting to give her every piece of written communication I had received since Richard's arrival. Every email, every message, every document. I gave her everything I had. She filed an employment tribunal claim on the 15th of November 2023. Race discrimination under the Equality Act 2010, direct discrimination and victimization. We also claimed unfair dismissal. Now I need to tell you about the part of this story that almost broke me before it saved me. In December 2023, during the disclosure process, Priya submitted a subject access request for all communications relating to my employment, my performance assessments, and the restructure process. The company responded in January 2024. The disclosure pack ran to 206 pages. On page 144, there was an email chain. Richard to the outgoing head of operations, dated the 17th of October 2023, 1 week before my dismissal. I am not going to read you the full email. What I will tell you is that Richard wrote in direct terms that he had concerns about the cultural fit of certain members of the junior management cohort. He wrote that the firm needed to move in a direction that reflected its client base and its market positioning. He wrote one specific sentence that Priya underlined in red when she showed it to me. A sentence about team composition and the importance of what he called visible alignment with the firm's identity. Visible alignment in an email sent 7 days before I was dismissed. From the CEO to the person who signed off my redundancy. I sat in Priya's office and I looked at those words and I felt something I do not have a clean name for. It was not anger exactly. It was something older and heavier than anger. It was the feeling of having known something was true and being told for months that you were imagining it and then seeing it written down in someone else's handwriting. It was the feeling of being right about the worst possible thing. Here is what I want to tell you about Richard because I have thought about it and I think it matters. Richard was not a cartoonish bigot. He was a man who had built his career in environments that looked a particular way and who had internalized over decades a picture of what success looked like and who belonged in it. He was not operating from hatred. He was operating from an assumption so deeply embedded, he probably could not see it clearly himself. That does not make what he wrote acceptable. It does not make what happened to me acceptable. But it is true. And I think it is important to say, because the people who do the most damage are usually not the ones who know they are doing it. The tribunal hearing was listed for 3 days in May 2024. Janet gave evidence on the second day. Janet had known about the email. Not its contents, she said. But she had known that Richard had communicated with the outgoing head of operations about team composition in the period before the redundancy decision. She had not seen the specific language. She had asked whether the restructure process was being applied consistently. She had been told yes. She had accepted that answer because she did not have evidence to contradict it, and because she had a department to run and a job she needed and a mortgage on a house in Salford. She told the tribunal she regretted not pushing harder. She said this quietly, looking at her hands. The employment judge asked her to speak up. She repeated it. She said she regretted not pushing harder. That is the moment I keep coming back to, not the email, Janet. The tribunal found in my favor on direct race discrimination. They found that the email constituted direct evidence of discriminatory motivation in the dismissal decision. They awarded me £22,400 in compensation for injury to feelings and financial loss. Partial win. That is what Priya called it. The unfair dismissal claim was not upheld because the tribunal found the procedural elements of the redundancy had been technically followed, even though the motivation behind it had not. £22,400 for what happened to my career, my confidence, and the 3 years I spent building something that was taken from me in a restructure email. I am working again. Different firm, different city, doing well. I carry the email with me, not literally, but in the way you carry things that change how you see rooms and meetings and people who look you in the eye on their first day and tell you that you are exactly the kind of talent they need. Richard still works in financial services, different firm, senior role. I looked him up last month and I'm still not sure why I did that or what I was hoping to find. Janet left the company in August 2024. I found that out by accident. I do not know where she went. Here is the thing I cannot resolve, and I'm going to ask you directly. £22,400 is what a tribunal decided my experience was worth. Is that justice? I genuinely do not know. I know it is recognition. I know it is a finding of fact. I know that somewhere in a legal record, it now states that what happened to me was discrimination. But Richard is still working. The email still exists, and no one in that building has ever looked me in the eye and said the words, "We were wrong and we are sorry." Does the money make it justice? Or does justice require something that employment law cannot give you? I am still trying to answer that. What do you think?